everyone! Pineapple here with our first foray into the One Piece live action in preparation for Season 2, Episode 1, Romance Dawn. An adaptation of the arc of the same name we already checked out the anime version of. Now, as of writing, I am in Eni's lobby, and have written anime reviews up to Logetown. They're a bit clunky since they're older, I wrote them while I was watching, but once we get past the live action, we will be getting back into the anime, but for now, we'll be looking into the Netflix adaptation. The last Netflix adaptation we took a look at was Bet, which while it was kind of a generic young adult mystery series, it had a great unique identity, and I enjoyed the adaptation even if it wasn't perfect. One Piece is a different beast though, as it may just be the best manga to live action adaptation I can name. So let's see what it gets right and where the flaws are, starting with episode 1. Now of course there will be times and comments where I compare the show to the anime, but mostly this will not be a review as an adaptation. As an adaptation, what it chooses to keep is almost flawless. Sure, not one-to-one, there are minimal problems with translating the details into this 8-episode series, so I will be bringing things up, but it won't be the be-all and end-all. I will be taking into account this show as mostly its own thing, even if I still miss the Luffy versus Don Krieg fight. We of course start at the beginning of the story, Gold Roger's execution, and with a great pick of narrator Ian McShane, not only having a great voice, but has experience as Blackbeard himself. He gives us the rundown of pirates as we see a neat map showing the Grand Line in the East Blue, heading for Logetown, immediately getting into the event, run by Garth, played by Vincent Regan. And both from a reinterpretation perspective and just on acting alone, I love Garp's inclusion here. Sure, his throughline isn't as strong as Nami's story, but having a B-plot and giving Kobe and Helmeppo things to do, sort of expanding upon the original Diary of Kobe Meppo arc, was a great choice. Roger, while not being along for long, due to the, execution, is excellently played by Michael Dorman, giving an iconic speech to the people that he may die here, but his treasure, the titular One Piece, is still out there for anyone to find.
I warned you. You brought this upon yourself.
That I did, Vice Admiral. Now I'm bringing it to one and all.
His speech must be as rousing to the populace as I find the performance, as once he is executed in a brutal but still strange as fuck way, being stabbed twice in the back, and I guess just left to bleed out? Anyway, we get a bunch of nice cameos in the crowd, Mihawk, Shanks, possibly Luffy's dad, a chick people are calling Crocodile pre-transition, and a blonde boy that is held on with a little too much focus, but time will tell if cameos as ambiguous as those are gonna be something down the line. Garp is left dumbfounded as the crowd instantly flee to start searching, and 22 years later, after some more nice narration and a cool title card, the card changing every episode to be personalized, which is a detail I absolutely love, we meet our Luffy, played by an actor I'd never heard of, Iñaki Godoy, and my god is he pretty much perfect. Now first of all, this show can reportedly boast that most of, if not all of the cast, are deemed perfect by the original writer, Eiichiro Oda. But also, I think I love a lot of these characters better here than in the original. The mix of comedic and serious tones are kept perfectly, but the characters are a little toned down. So Luffy's traits are still here, a little oblivious, way too optimistic, eager to protect his friends, but are toned down from their extreme, and this level of intensity really works for me, as there are moments in the anime that can leave me incredibly frustrated. He introduces Luffy's character pretty well immediately, and we get a nice gag with a news bird.
Mutiny.
But the ship is already sinking. I have no idea how he managed that, but how very Luffy of him. And to protect himself from the water, he hops in a barrel and decides to float to safety. The safety isn't very safe though, as he floats upon a ship battle. And not only do the ships look great, I love the ship combat. From the sparkly cannonballs to the rope swings, there's so much well-used energy, and the camera movement is mostly perfect. It's only some dodgy looking CGI blood upon repetitive rewatch that kinda dulls down the excitement for me. Leading the attack from her fantastic looking ship. Seriously, the ships look great on this show. The sets made with fantastic small details and wear by Captain Alvida. And in case it's spoiling, as I don't think she's been in any of the season 2 trailers at the time of writing, the actress shows dedication, and next season I'll be giving her major props if the actress follows the character's original path. Luffy's barrel is taken by her crew, but he's most likely having a nap, so instead we spend time with Alvida, introducing her most important crew member, kidnapped and kind-hearted young man, Kobe, played by Morgan Davies. Now, Kobe isn't my favourite character or anything, but Morgan performs the mix of meek and well-held ideals that really allows Kobe to shine this season, while Alvida gets to villain it up by caving a man's skull in when she realises Zoro isn't paying her attention. Later that night, Luffy figures it's safe to come out, scaring the shit out of Kobe, but eventually just looking for food. The dynamic is immediately fun, Luffy's ability to take things in his stride, demanding Kobe only be quiet, and upon Kobe's insinuation that pirates are scum, as shown by the flashbacks, all Luffy thinks about is the great pirates he knows. It shows that while we know from later Luffy can kick ass, he recognizes and doesn't take action when people like Kobe lash out from being afraid. Sure, it's not all that deep, but it's a great way to show his enrapturingly positive demeanor with others in just one scene. Upon his reminiscing of Shanks and his crew, we cut to Luffy's home village, seeing Shanks' crew, and yeah, he's the typical overzealous child, immediately trying to cut his face to show he's like Shanks. Jesus kid, calm down. Now, while being where I am in the anime, I have very little frame of reference for Shanks, but I think him played by Peter Godoy, and the rest of the crew, including Usopp's deadbeat dad, all both look great and have a natural energy with each other that, even though they're glorified background characters this season, helps them stick in your mind. Luffy pretty well communicates this romanticized view of piracy, and immediately decides to make fun of and attack Alvida when, in his slapstick, he ends up waking the crew. They all laugh at him, but he very funnily throws Kobe under the bus and decides to take Alvida on when she starts swinging. I love the banter, but boy do I feel bad when Kobe almost pisses himself. Luffy gets to show off her natural athletic ability, which I really like, making the fight scenes more dynamic, dodging and weaving between Alvida and Kobe, and keeping the use of his devil fruit powers down, as they don't always look perfect, but here as he deflects bullets and punts Alvida into the water, all look pretty nice. And the reaction from Alvida is pretty justified.
What kind of a monster are you? The stretchy kind.
So now with Alvida launched into the stratosphere, they escape the ship and cut to another protagonist, Makinyu as Roronoa Zoro. And I like that this scene was added before his usual meeting with Luffy. Not only does it look great and show off Makinyu's ability, but we get the seeds of Zoro's past planted, and even going so far as to tease Baroque works and show off Zoro's fighting ability in a neat sword fight, carving Mr. Seven in half. It also does well to establish Zoro as a main character, introducing him before he comes into contact with Luffy, as it makes the cast feel more well-rounded. Back with Luffy, we flash back to after the knife incident, him telling Shanks he was aiming for his eye. Yeah, nah, even if it wasn't for his age, this kid is way too crazy to take on the Grand Line. Shanks imparts some important lessons onto Luffy, and I like that they seem to tone up the father angle. Sure, Shanks didn't adopt him or anything official, but I like how clear it is why he idealizes Shanks when the man was basically both his friend and seemingly father figure. I guess it's not that hard to imprint on the literal criminal when you have Garp as a grandfather. Also, during this scene, an instrumental of Bink's Sake plays, and you know that must have got some longtime fans suddenly tearing up. Still angry at not being taken seriously, Luffy and his established massive stomach nosh on a devil fruit Shanks had in his loot. The prop looking great. Meanwhile, Shanks gets to show his moral fiber, cleaning up Makino's bar when a ruffian disrespects him.
Not everything can be solved with violence. A man needs to be strong, but he also needs to be good.
But when he tries to reason with Luffy, he stretches his arm, shocking everyone. In this scene, seeing Shanks and Makino's hair alongside others, I realise I love the attention to not only outfits, but the character's hair colour being kept. The blues, the greens, the pinks, reds and oranges. The hairstyles can be off every now and then with wigs, but the colours come off really well. And considering a lot of live actions, at least a few Japanese ones I've seen, and bet, just give a lot of the characters brown or black hair, opting for realism over character coordination. As far as I remember, there's a lack of purple in Tokyo Ghoul, no blue or green in Assassination Classroom, and in the Japanese Kakegurui live action, Mary not being blonde. Kobe is shocked to hear of nice pirates and has to talk Luffy out of just picking a direction and hoping to get to the Grand Line. But after a pep talk and a little violence from Luffy, they decide to head to the nearest marine base so Kobe can achieve his dream of becoming a marine that's capable of helping people. Now, Luffy smacking him is a bit far, but it's a great show of his relentless optimism, almost to a fault. The energy instantly endearing, but without being frustrating. Meanwhile, we get another clip like Zoro's, but with Nami, played by Emily Rudd, who we last saw on the channel in Fear Street Parts 2 and 3, immediately swindling some pirates out of their small ship. Now, the scene has a lot less action than Zoro's, but isn't any lesser when it comes to easily showing her character traits. Luffy and Kobe make it to Shell's Town, Luffy envious of the Pirates on Wanted posters, filled with references like Django, not only to this season but to later villains, and what may be the only designs of this show I don't like. Bellamy looks like an aged Count Olaf, and even though half of Foxy's face is missing, I still hate it. Luffy, of course, decides to get food, ending up in the same bar as both Zoro and Nami. Nami hitting on an older man, and Zoro getting a gift from a cheeky little girl. Now, don't get me wrong, she is cute, but when she first sees Zoro, she just kinda looks at him and laughs. That's demon child energy right there.
It's, well, terrifying.
When turning around, she runs into Helmeppo, played well by Aidan Scott. Basically, what if Draco Malfoy was super creepy? Seriously, how the fuck does he laugh like that?
And apologize to the girl.
But also gets a redemption arc. He mocks the girl, and when Zoro's bleeding heart intervenes, he starts on Zoro, leading to Zoro kicking the ass of every marine in the bar. Both Kobe and Nami taking advantage of the chaos, her knocking out and stripping her prey, and him hiding under the tables as soon as humanly possible. The fight scene is done well, used to show more of Zoro's martial prowess, as he barely has to use a blade, sending Helmeppo running to Daddy.
You wait till my father hears about this.
We then meet Lucius, Helmeppo's dad, Langley Kirkwood as Captain Morgan. And no, I don't think I have to make a joke about the name, who almost immediately smacks his son around. When Zoro won't work under Morgan, he forces him to spend a week in the yard as punishment, while Kobe has a crisis of faith. What a surprise that your governmental force is corrupt, although Luffy says it more poetically.
If there are good pirates and bad pirates, then there are going to be good Marines and bad Marines too. You'll be one of the good ones.
The next day, Malfoy is on his shit again, taunting Zoro with his sword, but reveals he'll probably just execute Zoro anyway. So Zoro's lucky that Luffy, in his random wandering, manages to come across him and free the pirate hunter, immediately wanting him on his crew. So when Luffy's optimism gets through and Zoro admits he wants to become the world's greatest swordsman, Luffy releases him even if he won't join his crew, Zoro seeming confused at Luffy's selfless actions. But I do like that aspect of Luffy shown off with Zoro and Kobe here. Though with Luffy going out to seek his greatest dream, he so easily helps others find theirs, is such an interesting part of the character to focus on. Nami is looking for a map to the Grand Line, not so inconspicuously, and gets made almost immediately, having to kick some ass. And another commendable thing about this show is that reportedly, most if not all the Straw Hats have a history with martial arts and physical activity, or actively did some training for the show. The off-screen effort really showing. As Luffy blunders in, clocking Nami from the bar, she tries to arrest him. But they end up working together, her following him, and they just so happen to blunder right into Morgan's path, pulling the old prisoner-jailer routine. Meanwhile, Helmeppo is getting his freak on, posing with Zoro's swords, with cheeks and presumably balls completely out. We did not need that, but major respect for going pantsless, I guess. Nami gets them an easy way into head office with her thief skills, but she blows up on him when he asks her to join his pirate crew. Turns out she isn't so sweet on the idea of pirates. Nami shows her realist attitude, dismissing Luffy's dreams, but they do manage to find the map, only it's locked in a safe. So since Morgan realizes he's been had, Luffy figures the best way out is to toss the safe out the window along with the two of them, back out into the yard. This starts the episode's big battle, Nami and Luffy fighting off a gang of marines with great camera movement and obvious levels of effort, and sure, when there's wire work, it's a bit bleeding obvious obvious, but it all looks great anyway. Zoro thinks of leaving but decides to help anyway.
We're a crew.
Nope, not a crew.
Together.
And Morgan makes his way down to fight the three, spouting about how great he is and that he beat the Black Cat pirates, although that didn't seem to work out as well as he thought it did, as we will find out later. So now we essentially get Zoro and Luffy versus Morgan while Nami fends off the rabble in the background, and she does it well, but it is a little sad that she feels relegated to the sidelines while Zoro and Luffy not only get the pretty cool focused on fight, but the two of them also get the time to bond, starting off by running into each other and lacking coordination, but by the end are pretty good at reading each other and manage to take the axe hand down. Also, I love the translation of Zoro's third sword style to live action. Sure, it doesn't seem as useful as it does in the anime, but in this fight they make sure to show the audience how his fighting with it does take advantage of a third blade, even if it is in his mouth.
So that's where it goes.
The trio gets some more cute interactions as they take the safe and retreat to Nami's ship, only to be met with Helmeppo. Kirby getting his badass moment by knocking his lights out. Wow, a Malfoy getting punched never loses its luster.
I might even get a medal or something.
So after doing them a solid, Kirby decides to stay and become a Marine, Luffy supporting him all the way, and the episode ends after they sail out with a couple narrative hooks. First, Garp returns and seems really interested in finding the map Luffy stole. I'm loving the live action Den Den Mushi, and also we get a nice both comedic and tense scene of one of Buggy's minions, who we saw before at the bar informing his captain the map was taken.
They must have been planning this for months.
But more on Buggy next time. So that was episode 1 of the One Piece live action Romance Dawn, well titled as that's the arc it adapts. This is a great first episode, introducing the characters well and giving us a good showcase of the world's style, which is both good in adaptation and so far in its unique style. I'm excited to see where the show goes and how it continues to handle the adaptation, since not everything is one-to-one, as pieces of the puzzle are moved around or some minor characters don't appear to make the story run smoother in its 8-episode run. For the most part, not missing anything major. The episode opens in flashback land, Luffy trying to train his powers much to Makino's dismay, and she gives us the rundown of Devil Fruit abilities. Pretty good to get this established early, not only because it raises the stakes of Buggy's trap later on, but the flashback drama as well. No two Devil Fruits are the same, and when you eat one, the sea can sap your energy or not allow you to swim, effectively making drowning a very real problem.
You ever heard the saying there's no such thing as a free lunch?
Still lunchtime?
Although they're not shown a lot, I do like Makino and Luffy's easy dynamic. Shanks is leaving soon but refuses to take Luffy along, bumming him out. And back in the present, Nami manages to unlock the safe, but only after pissing Luffy off by slapping his hat into the wind. Inside is the map showing the East Blue, and the route through Reverse Mountain into the Grand Line. And a bounty for the pirate Kuro. Nami giving us a nice rundown of the planet's layout. This episode seems to be really good at establishing first the Devil Fruit, and now the planet, and going on to reiterate Gold Roger's treasure. Good to hear what the interpretation of the One Piece is from the pirates themselves. All very good things to put right in episode 2, and most of it through dialogue feeling pretty natural. We get to the title card, nicely themed around Buggy. Seriously, I'm a sucker for the personalized title cards. As a red cloud spikes the crew, Luffy gobbling down the map like an absolute freak to keep it safe. Seriously, Jesus, I guess with a rubber body you lose the gag reflex. The crew wake up boxed like the animals in Madagascar, getting some good character dialogue in, and finding themselves in the middle of Buggy's circus, along with his quite literal captive audience. Before we talk about the big clown himself, we've already seen Kabaji, and we will get some dialogue later, even though some characters aren't given lines. Minor characters like Moji here and Pearl later are clear in the background with detailed appearances. It shows a real love and effort for the original, even though the way the show's been made they can't include every detail and character. Buggy barges in and is quite dissatisfied with the lack of Richie. Now, Buggy is played by Jeff Ward, and I have to say he is brilliantly done. Buggy manages to hit the mark right between scary and funny, imposingly strong and pathetic. I haven't seen him in next season's promotional material, but I really do hope he returns for the Logtown arc. Luffy pretty quickly pisses Buggy off, the use of the word nose triggering him, even more so when he reveals they took the map he wanted.
I was upstaged by 3 little nobodies who stole it from right out under my nose. No! It's in my head now!
Buggy showboats a bit, wanting the One Piece for himself, and Zoro gets fed up. So after some more funny moments, Nami makes her move, using her good lying skills and selling out Luffy's powers to give her time to escape. But horror stops her in her tracks as she sees how absolutely ruined that the pirates have left Orange Town. This working really well for Nami's character, her able to wipe selling Luffy out from her conscience, but unable to control her trauma when seeing the state of the innocent village. Wanting information on the map, the clown splits the crew up, and we pop back in at Shell's Town. Kirby enlisted in the Marines properly along with Helmeppo, while Morgan sucks up to Vice Admiral Garp, taking any opportunity to degrade his son and actually complimenting the new blood. Garp instantly interested in the boy. Zoro and Nami are trapped, bantering back and forth while Luffy is having a blast being stretched by Buggy. Sure, it's painful, but he's having the time of his life. Wow, everything I added onto that sentence made it sound worse. Buggy starts trying to psychoanalyze Luffy, realizing Shanks is involved, revealing they were on a crew together, but feels that Shanks betrayed him. But let's be honest, it probably didn't happen that way. Buggy actually has a moment where he seems to empathize with Luffy, theorizing Shanks hurt Luffy as well.
He wanted to keep my star from shining too brightly!
Is that what he did to you, Rubber Boy? Did Shanks betray you too?
And my god, is the depth here a breath of fresh air. Don't get me wrong, Buggy is very good in the anime, but to me, he was either being the creepy villain or being the comic relief. Here, he gets to do both, but also feel like a real dramatic character. That's probably the best thing this version gives these characters, able to give them more typical depth and rely less on ridiculous animated comedy tropes. I'm not saying the main show doing that is a negative or uncreative, but I gel a lot more with these more typical for TV serials than the animated extreme caricatures. This show's ability to reinvent them for a more familiar live action setting and feeling being a mastery. And the actors being physically there in person also allows a lot more nuance to come through in the performance. Buggy has more diva moments as the town mayor refuses to do the torturing, Luffy freeing himself and punching Buggy's head clean off the shoulders when he threatens a kid.
So no head?
This works as a really nice reveal as his head floats back on, being the product of his devil fruit, the Chop Chop fruit. The CGI, a little jank in parts, but most of the uncanniness comes across intentionally, with Buggy knocking Luffy out again. Nami has spent all this time failing to pick her lock, some master thief she is, and Zoro is intimidated by a man on a unicycle. What a fucking entrance. So it turns out Kabaji has a vendetta, since Zoro at one point killed his brother, a story I don't think has ever been explored. He's not very threatening since the whole thing he does is intimidation through missing throwing knives, but it's camp enough. Back with Kobe, Garp is feeding Morgan's snail, both cute and gross at the same time, while he interrogates Kobe about Luffy. Kobe continues his perfect mix of timidness and heart as he tells Garp the truth of his interactions with the Straw Hat pirate. Garp seemingly not having been sure Luffy was the one in the Straw Hat if his reaction is to be believed, as he never says it outright and only implies that whoever he's after is very interesting to him. And considering the position Shanks is in as one of the most powerful pirates, it's believable that at this point Garp could have thought he was after Shanks. But imagine that's who he came looking for, one of the 4 emperors or whatever they're called, and then realizes it's just his grandson. Garp seems pretty satisfied, pushing us back into flashback land, where the ruffian from the last episode starts pulling shit again, only for Shanks and his crew to very skillfully knock their teeth out, even if 1 or 2 of the sound effects are strange. Seriously, what the fuck was that? Only for them to realize Luffy is gone, back in the present stuck in Buggy's water trap, displayed with a neat camera movement. Buggy and Luffy get some more great moments, going from comedic to very join the dark side. Buggy getting some more great introspection. Back in Flashback Land, the ruffian has kidnapped Luffy, but is very easily eaten by a Sea King. No, not the Pokemon. Shanks saves him, forcing the Sea King to piss off with a stare, but only once it takes a bite out of him. Shanks still holding Luffy close, and makes sure he's safe even with one arm down. Thanks to Kabaji's fucking around, it's easy for Zoro to get out as he proclaims his respect for Luffy, getting out of there with Nami to kick the circus's ass. It's the Straw Hats versus Buggy as Nami breaks Luffy out so he can vomit up the map. Ew. The fighting all looks good as Buggy uses his abilities against them, breaking the cardinal rule by stabbing the Straw Hat. But Luffy comes up with the idea to pack Buggy's pieces away, reducing him to a head, hands, and feet. A hilarious visual, especially in its translation to live action. Ending when Luffy launches him into the stratosphere like Team Rocket. The crew meet up, I love that each of them are in respective color-coded spotlights, and Luffy makes sure they free the townspeople. The words between him and the mayor not only good on their own, but the look Nami gives him is very well acted. Back at Shellstown, Garp does the badass thing, stringing Morgan up like he did to Zoro, but also proclaims he'll be going after the Straw Hats. Shushu gets a lovely cameo, and the Straw Hats leave Orange Town better than they left it. Nami fixing up Luffy's hat once we see Shanks giving his hat to Luffy as he leaves Luffy after the incident. The scene is very touching, promising to see each other again, and it's played really sweetly. Nami is feeling a lot better being with Luffy and Zoro, seeing their good sides, but as the episode leaves off, we get a hint towards her more treacherous nature, using a cute mini snail phone to contact a mysterious entity about having the map. I have no idea if these tiny Den earphones are in the manga or anime canon, but they should be. So that was the man with the straw hat, and we have another really solid episode. Nami, Luffy, and Zoro all work together well, the marine stuff doesn't impede on the pacing and does well to set up their later appearances. And Buggy was an absolute delight. Next up we have the Syrup Village arc, the introduction to my least favourite Straw Hat in the anime, so let's see if the live action can save the character for me. We get a pretty decent intro to Usopp, played by Jacob Romero, as he plays the same prank he's been doing for years, sounding the pirate alarm. Yes, he really is just asking for a boy who cried wolf moment, isn't he? The townspeople over these 7 years not remotely amused. Now this is pretty spot on for Usopp, a pathological liar who deals with his insecurities in pretty self-destructive ways, but through the series seeking to better himself. And while I like his journey, at least so far as Water 7 and Enies Lobby, I find the anime version of the character to be consistently grating. I had enough of him by the time we got to Skypiea, but I feel like the live-action version of the character keeps these core traits, but with a physical actor removes the cartoonish nth degree of his characterization, making him, yes, a little annoying at times, but mostly as comic relief in those aspects, not as someone you want them to throw overboard. He gets his unique title card, loving those, and back with the crew Luffy has cutely made a Jolly Roger. It's not great, but he tried his best and that's the main thing.
Zoro, check it out.
That's unique.
It takes a while, but Zoro finds a leak, busting Nami's way of communication and meaning the boat is on borrowed time. So while Luffy coins them the Straw Hats, he figures they need to go where the boats are made. So Nami points them towards the Gecko Islands, coincidentally the direction of Syrup Village, giving us some fun banter. Meanwhile, Garp's pretty cool looking ship heads in the same direction, him trying to whip his new marines, including Helmeppo and Kobe, into shape. Helmeppo getting humbled when trying to be a dick, getting Kobe upgraded while Malfoy rots with the menial tasks. Zoro is pissed that they missed the bounty on Buggy's head, finding his wanted poster in Syrup Village. With a really bad lens. Jesus, what is with this blurry fisheye business? There is a time and a place for these kind of shots, and I'm pretty sure it is not right now. We cut back to see Buggy finally putting himself back together, met with one of Arlong's fishmen. Buggy trying to be confident, but he's clearly intimidated even before the fishman kicks his ass. It's short and we'll see more of Arlong later, but considering the great actor and the way it better ties into the season narrative, I like that we get to see more of Buggy instead of waiting till Logetown. The Straw Hats find the shipbuilding yard, Luffy's eyes a little bigger than his stomach. Ironic since his stomach seems boundless. But after Nami clocks the way this world works, they run into Usopp. Luffy not wanting to steal a ship, once again idealized, while Nami wants to up and take one. But Luffy is immediately taken in by Usopp's upselling. But mostly, while he does embellish details, his actual lies come apparent very quickly, mostly voluntarily. So he's not too bad. And the delivery helps sell it in a comedic aspect, even if really not my type of comedy. Usopp reveals he's friends with the shipyard's owner, taking them to her, while Garp, after wandering around for a little bit, like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, he challenges Kobe to a game of Go. Wow, if only he treated his grandson with this much respect, they might be on better terms. Not much is done with this yet, so with a really neat transition, we come back to Usopp sneaking them onto his friend's Kaya's grounds. Kaya, in truth, a very good friend of his, but the staff of the house not enjoying the liar's presence. Of course, since they appear here, I'll talk about them now. The two lower staff, Bucci and Sham, who appeared later in this arc in the anime, work really well now as staff in the house, making Kaya's house seem more realistic and fleshed out than just Klahadore and Mary. Both looking really nice, but the big change comes in, why is the character that's supposed to look like a freaky looking hunchbacked catman in Sham hot now? What a glow up! Gollum from Lord of the Rings to a goddamn model. Good lord! Okay, that's enough simping, as the sick, Kaya, and attentive, but let's face it, obviously evil butler Klahadore arrive. Now the reveal isn't really a surprise, but I do think that Alexander Maniatis does a very good job at selling both the kind and psychopathic sides of Klahadore, aka Kuro. But we already know the show's formula, and of course it's going to be the slow-talking, imposing butler that Zoro seems to recognize. Meanwhile, Kaya is very happy to see Usopp and invites them all in, played by Celeste Lutz. And Kaya is used a lot better here than in the anime on the whole, although even without perfect recollection of the Syrup Village anime arc, I do feel that Kaya loses some agency here. But other than her very good interactions with Usopp, her many new scenes with Nami, and the way Nami's worldview is challenged by finding the one loving and kind rich person in power, those scenes being very good additions I don't recall from the anime, which do really well to cement Kaya as more of a character outside of the plot. And bringing Nami to the front, considering with Luffy, she is one of the larger protagonists plot-wise. We get to see a cute scene between Usopp and Kaya where he delivers her birthday gift. It's obviously a segue into one of his tall tales, but it's clear that she knows his bullshit, so I love the dynamic the characters have. Even if the stories are falsehoods, she enjoys Usopp's company, and even the fakery is exciting enough when she's so sickly, his lies being less selfish aggrandizing, but something he does for both internal issues like the pirates, and for her sake.
As tea is the only thing that makes me feel better. That and your stories, of course.
Well, I'll keep going on these grand adventures as long as you want to hear them.
The crew shape up for dinner, Nami trying outfits proving that it's all of the women in this house serving, not just the servant. Even if Zoro and Luffy's minds really aren't on the ball. The sets on the inside of the house are all spectacular. And looking around, Luffy and Nami argue about Kaya. Between his reading of Kaya as lonely and Nami slipping back into her rich people hatred, making for more good dialogue between the crew, betting that he can get the ship for free, Nami's plan being a backup. Meanwhile, Klahadore is serving Kaya suspicious tea, and he really is laying it on thick. But the actors really work well together, only making the betrayal more heartbreaking, but like I said before, it's more an expectation of tropes that reveals his intent this early, and not the acting. But he does immediately come to the kitchen, intimidating the cat help, so much that they almost piss themselves. Sure, they don't explicitly spell out he's in on the plot, so he might just be abusive of the staff. Probably the lesser of those two evils, but come on. I would have liked it if they kept up the charade a little longer. But of course, the butler will do it. Garp spends some more time with Kobe. It's not a lot, but even with these short scenes, the dynamic is very entertaining and helps with the illusion of time passing over at the mansion. We get to see the live-action Mary, and I'm not disappointed. I love how they've brought this world to life where people can look ridiculous as if dressing like a sheep, and they just roll with it. Perfect tone-wise, and I love his look. Nami tries to put the moves on him, but he is not that receptive. But the dinner starts as she gets to talk with Kaya while Zoro interrogates Klahadore, insinuating he is Kuro. And the way Kuro responds does not sound like the original question to me.
Funky bar. Mirror Ball Island.
Funky bar.
While Mary is very insistent, Kaya shouldn't be giving Klahadore control of the shipyard. Some resistance is put up against Klahadore when he tries to feed Kaya the suspicious stew.
Blue means sharks in it!
But Kaya reveals that tonight she will receive full ownership of the shipyard, coming of age, Mary having run it all this time. Luffy happy since they want a ship. Kaya a lot more receptive to dealing with pirates than expected. But let's face it, the way Luffy talks about their dealing with Buggy, she probably assumes he's another Usopp. He brings about too much excitement, seriously dude, get the fuck off the table, while Nami and Zoro suffer secondhand embarrassment, causing Kaya to deteriorate once Klahadore freaks the fuck out. Garp is getting his ass kicked, so when evidence of Luffy turning up at the Gecko Islands appears, he sends Kobe in charge along with Helmeppo to search for them. At the same time, Kuro starts acting like a horror movie villain. And when he gets wind of Mary trying to convince Kaya out of giving Klahadore the shipyard, seriously, we just met him and he's kinda badass for standing up to Kuro, but unfortunately Kuro goes full horror movie and after spending time fucking with Mary finally stabs him 5 times at once. Now, do his kitty claw gloves look ridiculous? Yes, but my god, is everything about his look and mannerisms a perfect adaptation and evolution of the character. The goofier aspects like the blades are made imposing and his personality is a lot more menacing and verbally violent. I'm loving this arc when it was one of the weaker from the East Blue in the anime. We cut back to Buggy again and Arlong himself is there to intimidate him, coming along with his own hip-hop beat. Now I like the portrayal by McKinley Belcher III. My only critique is that I think he should be a little bigger, taller and buffer, but I kinda get why they didn't go that route, or try adding a whole bunch of CGI to make him taller. As he is, he's still pretty intimidating. I just think having him tower more over his opponents by a higher degree added better to his intimidation. And it seems the showrunners know this by purposefully having Buggy lower than him and keeping Arlong predominantly in the shadow, even if you can clearly see him. Buggy bargains for his own freedom by pointing Arlong Luffy's way, implying he can get Luffy's location, so he gets clown-napped. Back at the house, Zoro and Luffy are sneaking around, deciding to do some midnight snacking, while Nami decides rich people are for robbing. Her accidentally running straight into Kaya, who couldn't really care less about Nami taking the pricey things that she doesn't care about. Nami being very prickly, but eventually the kind girl worms her way into Nami's good graces. The two understanding each other well. Usopp is found in the kitchen. Wait, hold on, do only the ill sleep in this goddamn house? Usopp enjoys Luffy's stories, both him and Kaya refusing to acknowledge their feelings, but it's really sweet how they talk about each other. Her there for him and him using his stories to do the same. Kaya gets some more good emotional moments talking about her parents. Still really good with Nami. Luffy recognizes Usopp's good aim, realizing his deadbeat dad, Yasopp, was part of Shanks' crew. Damn, imagine meeting some guy who spent time with your deadbeat dad you haven't seen in however long, telling you he gave out great wisdom. That's gotta suck. Luffy chugs the nondescript blue porridge, while the other boys go into the cellar for some wine, but instead come upon some chopped lamb. Okay, that joke might have been in bad taste. Klahadore confronts them before they can get out, Zoro finally fully recognizing him as Kuro, who was teased having his wanted poster in the safe earlier, and Captain Morgan having mentioned him in episode 1. Zoro ready to fight but taken out by the hottie, sending Usopp running away. The minions left to deal with the body, dumping him in the well out back. Nami and Kaya finish their girl time, finishing with a pep talk and Nami leaving behind some of her collected treasure. A really nice moment. Usopp predictably isn't believed when screaming out about pirates, and we reveal that Usopp's calling was a cry for help, trying to call his father back home as his sickly mother literally dies in front of him. Oh, that is fucked up. Finally, the episode ends with Kobe appearing, someone finally believing Usopp, and proving that having Kobe this early on in the story isn't a waste. So that was part 1 of the Syrup Village arc, episode 3, Tell No Tales. And we got a very strong outing. This Usopp feels a lot better than in the anime version, and to be fair, it's been a while since I've watched the anime version, but I also feel that way with Kaya. As yes, she has strong emotional ties to Kuro, especially in the next episode, but I like that a lot of her characterization is less towards the story arc and more towards our main characters. Kuro is adapted well, and I always enjoy seeing more Sham in this. We got some more overarching plot progression that was nicely done, and bringing Kobe into the series arc felt very natural with the show's direction. So I'm excited to see where this arc goes next time. We open the episode inside the well. Zoro pretty much perfectly fine, just a little bruised, but he's hit his head hard enough to induce flashbacks for this episode, so I suppose they did do a number on him. Now what really surprised me is he wakes up next to Mary's corpse. In the anime, Mary does get attacked, but I'm fairly sure he survived. So the episode ending with Kaya mourning his loss was a genuine surprise. Sure, he was only a minor character, but considering the usual startling lack of death in a lot of One Piece, beyond flashbacks, it's a genuine twist to feel like the stakes are risen, even if you know the main characters probably aren't gonna die. Zoro's only way out is to climb, giving us a cool Zoro-themed title card. We pick up where we left off with Kobe looking to help Usopp, learning Luffy is there as well as Kuro. But even though Kobe was put in charge, Helmeppo takes every single opportunity to bitch and whine, even defending his father when we know how pathetic that gobshite was, while these two other marine dudes just stand there in the background and do nothing. God, I need Kobe to punch him again. Nami finds Luffy half dead from the blue mystery soup, but has to hide when the help comes knocking. Not being very secretive about their evil schemes, learning Luffy ruined their poisonous plan. So in the well he is to be sent. And beyond Sham being smoking, I really like her and Buchi's dynamic. Their arguing and snark really entertaining, now that their true colours can be shown. Usopp brings the Marines, but it's fairly easy for Kuro to play the innocent, so he uses another smart use of the Den Den Mushi, a switchboard and intercom version, to have the duo bring Luffy to the door, handing him over but still not allowing the Marines entry. So while Nami rocks Sham's shit, Usopp gets fed up being between Helmeppo and Kuro's lying ass, taking off, leaving the Marines without much to do but leave with Luffy. Zoro isn't making much headway, but is flashing back to his youth at a dojo, and with some cool combat, having his ass handed back to him repeatedly by fellow sword student Kuina, the bar that he cannot surpass. In his arrogance, he believes that since they aren't real swords, that's the reason that he can't win, so she calls his bluff. I like how well Zoro's backstory can further endear him to the audience, as in these flashbacks you empathise as he goes through this hardship, but let's be honest, he starts off as a right little shit. We don't get as much time with Kuina as I feel the anime flashbacks allowed, but I feel just enough time is spent in this episode with her to have her story hit as well as it should. Usopp has gone directly to Kaya to warn her about Kuro, and it goes about as well as you'd imagine. And my god, it's actually heartbreaking. Kaya has no reason not to trust Kuro, and knowing Usopp's penchant for stories, is unable to believe him. But he still refuses to leave for her safety. The scene's blocking isn't perfect, but the acting from the both of them sells it completely. Kuro and Buchi find Sham recovering from Nami's vicious attack, and even though I enjoyed their bickering, I love that Buchi sounds worried and so quickly picks her up. Unlike Arlong's fishmen, Kuro or Buggy, I like when the 100% evil villains still have redeeming qualities if only to their own. I mean, you know sure as hell Kuro wouldn't stick his neck out for these two, but I like that they have their own friendly dynamic, even if they were shown before to jab at each other. The clock strikes midnight, meaning it's time to kill Kaya and take her business, but it is a little unbelievable in translation, as in the anime they took great lengths to have Kaya sign over the deed on paper, so it all looks legit. But here, they're just like, okay, she's of legal age now, let's kill her. It doesn't feel as well thought out or calculated as Kuro should be, and is one of the aspects I think the adaptation spends too much time trying to streamline the story. Meaning aspects like a particular one on the Arlong Park arc get overlooked and lose a lot of their deeper meaning. Sure, the poison thing was clever, but now they're just off to Stabby Town. Not so believable for her and Mary to die like that, and you think with the massive shipyard business, it would be carefully looked into. So realistically, Kuro should be going up there to force feed her a bunch of poison, which would honestly be more imposing than him trying to stab her. It's almost there, but just doesn't click for me. The villains use a clever system to lock down the house so no one can get in or out. Nami returning to make sure Kaya's okay and confirm Usopp's story. Now the pirates in their proper garb roam the halls ready to kill, so Nami eventually manages to get through to Kaya, them taking the secret passages in the walls to escape from the Black Cat pirates. Kuro, while he looks ridiculous talking to no one, plays finding enjoyment in his scathing cruelty very well. Kaya's sickness gives them away, Kuro giving chase while Zoro is still in the goddamn well. Falling down again as in the past, Kaya absolutely thrashes him in their duel, which for the most part looks pretty good action-wise. There's only one or two moves that I didn't like, but young Zoro is not good at the trash talk.
Ready to learn your lesson?
Not in this lifetime. Let's end this.
Zoro takes his loss really hard, figuring she should just kill him since he can't beat her. Okay, dude, just like Luffy stabbing himself, I think you're jumping the gun a little bit. She shows respect by helping him up, and she gets her speech about her gender, being fairly realistic in the fact that most men will have the genetic advantage of strength over her. A very real fear that women in multiple circumstances could have. But having it be out of a fear of irrelevance and failure is an interesting direction, especially for the daughter of a sensei swordsman. So Zoro promises to fight her every day, both of them promising to each other to fight until one of them becomes the greatest swordsman or woman, or swords person. And yeah, I love this backstory. It fits One Piece's themes that with skill and dedication, one can do great things, achieving your dreams, and also is very good for Zoro's character. Sure, it can read simply as him going, women can be just as great as men, but on a deeper level is more about the theme I mentioned before, him not allowing the best opponent he's had, the one that he looks up to simply give up when in doubt. And that connection makes the coming tragedy only more meaningful. Kirby recognizes that something's up, but Helmeppo is still a dick. Luffy starts to wake up, in character that his first word is meat, and thankfully he goes all exorcist on Helmeppo. It's the least that he deserves. Back in the mansion, they manage to locate Kaya's parents' room to undo the security, Nami giving her a well-acted pep talk, but raising the security gives away their location. Zoro once again tries to ascend from the well, actually managing it this time, and it's nicely intercut with the end of his backstory. One day, waiting for Kaya, her father shows up instead, telling him that Kuina died, although not elaborating here, and I do find that a little annoying. One of the reasons that her death is so meaningful is the aspect of someone with such a lofty and extreme goal dying to something as mundane as falling down the stairs. I really think the dichotomy between their grandiose ideas and the fairly simple way that she passes make the story more meaningful. The intercutting with her funeral and her father talking with Zoro taking Kuina's sword, the Wado Ichimonji, is all well done and emotional, but it's just missing that little something extra.
And it's up to you to fulfill that promise. For you. And for her.
Luffy, now awake, tells Kobe that Usopp was right, them needing to go back, but thankfully Zoro comes along, just sort of appearing out of nowhere, before Helmeppo gets to up himself. Unfortunately, the punch this time isn't as good as the last one. Kirby does a shit job of arresting them, letting them go. Like, I would probably respect him more if he gave a little bit of backbone, but Luffy just says he's going and Kobe's left standing there in the middle of the road with 3 unconscious Marines. Like, I don't expect him to try and physically take Luffy down, but even a little bit of strong arguing would feel more useful. Hell, he could even go along with them. Kuro finds his prey, so after they hide, he spends his valuable time trying to look cool, but momentarily freaking out and insulting her, calling Kaya pathetic, and spoiled and useless as if he hadn't spent the last few years keeping her disabled, unable to leave the house.
Oh, Clyde. I miss my mommy.
He really is just complaining about doing the job he signed up for. They try to make a break for it but fail miserably, Usopp drawing his ire to stop him from killing Kaya, giving Usopp his moment of heroism. But even though the emotions are there, I feel like not allowing Kaya to have a moment for her to properly stand up to Kuro is missing a lot of potential. But this gives Luffy enough time to enter the fray. Meanwhile, Zoro ends up going against both the cook and the hottie, in a sword fight that kinda ends up being more interesting in choreography than the main fight. Seriously, between the swordplay and the way the cat pirates interact, when it comes to collaborating against Zoro, it all works really well. And I kind of wanted to go back every time we cut to Luffy versus Kuro. Luffy's fight against Kuro is pretty cool, even if it's not my favorite. Kuro does well interacting with Luffy, and I like how Luffy has to adapt to Kuro's flighty style, slowly, punch by punch, figuring Kuro out, both in fighting style and cutting into Kuro emotionally when they argue their ideals.
You gave up on your dream. No one who does that can ever call themselves a pirate.
Back in Zoro's fight, Sham steals the Wado Ichimonji from him, meaning her and Kuina have three things in common. Female, used that sword, and fell down the stairs as Zoro knocks her down. What a crazy thing to do. Zoro gets the sword back in cool fashion, easily knocking Sham and Buchi out. And Luffy, after doing a lot of well-performed dodging, figures Kuro's weakness out, keeping him in one place and headbutting him out of the window, much to the escaping trio's relief. Kaya, grateful for their assistance, gives them the ship they were checking out before, Luffy slyly gloating to Nami, and naming the ship the Going Merry in honor of Kaya's very dead friend. Usopp decides to stay on the island by Kaya's side when he's asked to join Luffy's crew, but she knows his dreams, and so as she decides to become a doctor, she says goodbye to him with a kiss, asking him to come back and tell her tales of his soon-to-be true adventures. Really sweet stuff, with Luffy there for some comedic relief. So Kaya's completely alone now, right? Mary was running the shipyard, so she has to figure all that out. All of her staff wanted to murder her, Kuro having escaped the island, and the other two tied up in her foyer. And her parents are long since dead. Okay, now I know why Mary stayed alive in the original. That is super depressing. The Straw Hat crew sail away, each crew member getting a little moment settling in, while Kuro suffers. Meanwhile, Kobe is very depressed he lost, but Garp is happy enough, now able to see the Going Merry sailing away, Kobe feeling a little conflicted. Usopp gets annoying trying to one-up Luffy, but disaster strikes as Garp starts shooting cannonballs, everyone being shocked as Luffy recognizing his grandpa.
Grandpa?
Grandpa?
Wait, so Kuro just gets away? Seriously? I mean, I'm pretty sure that also happens in the anime, but in this version of the timeline, Garp's ship is right there, and I'm sure the Marines could take one look at this guy and go, oh, that looks a lot like the Kuro guy that we were being told was on this island. So that was episode 4, the end of the Syrup Village arc. The cliffhanger was pretty effective, but within the episode, Usopp was pretty good, the boy who cried wolf aspect obvious, but emotionally impactful, and our villains in both fights with our heroes were pretty entertaining. Zoro's backstory was also pretty well done, mixed well with his journey out of, well, the well. And while Helmeppo was still a whiny little bitch, and Kobe didn't really do anything, their inclusion for the most part worked really well. And next up, we will be heading to Baratie. We pick up where we left off with Garp after the Merry, so we hop to flashback land post-Shanks, Garp in his holiday garb, disgusted with Luffy's dreams of becoming a pirate, wanting him to be a Marine instead. And he's cruel and a little rough with Luffy, but at least unlike the show, he isn't just wailing on the boy. Or at least we don't see that side of him. Maybe without the physical comedy aspect, the abuse was just a bit too much for Netflix. Luffy and Nami take charge, Usopp and Zoro less sure what to do. We get another cool Denden Mushi variant, a horn speaker, I'm loving these. Garp requesting surrender, but knowing Luffy, he instead throws a cannonball. Luffy in return sending it back with some strange effects and ruining their forward sail. Kobe actually saving Helmeppo's ass from being crushed. This of course allows the Straw Hats to escape into a nearby fog.
Nami, get us out of here.
Garp's reaction not quite that of a sane man. I like that this is essentially a reworking of their appearance post Enies lobby, feeling a lot more appropriate earlier on, and that leads us into our next title card. Quite Baratier and Zeph coded, still McLoving it. Nami seeks a place where they can lay low for a bit while they debate who's going to talk with Luffy about what just happened. But like usual, the boys are of no use to her, so she ends up sending Zoro his way, but not much comes of it.
About the battle, you want to talk about it?
Nope.
Okay, good talk. Seems fine to me.
Their navigation problems all seem to be solved though, as Luffy's nose and stomach direct the way straight through the fog to Baratier, even if they don't believe him at first.
We could guess brain damage.
I think that every day.
So they make it to Baratier, and now I'm even more pissed we didn't get the Krieg fight because this set fucking rules. Sure, it's obviously a mix of practical and CGI, but look at it, that's amazing. And the inside set is pretty good too. Nami manages to secure them a table with a little bribery, and after some physical comedy courtesy of Zoro, a cook and their waiter is introduced, Taz Skylar, as Sanji. And boy does this adaptation give and take. Now as for the taking, coming in so late in the season, I do think Sanji gets a little shafted. It's clear that Luffy, Nami and Zoro are the show's overall focus, while Usopp and Sanji are more deeply focused on in their particular arcs. So I do hope they are all a little more balanced next season, but Sanji himself, holy fuck is he more palatable. Get it? Palatable. In this version. Sanji in the anime is cool and collected, but at the sight of little cleavage basically becomes this American dad joke.
Missy, if you think that is gonna... Owie wowie! Baby wants mommy! Make it dirty!
But here his personality is leveled out, so instead of going from cartoonish extreme to extreme, he has an overall cool but flirty personality, able to keep the charm and comedy of the character, but more like a real person and not a lecherous cartoon. And just like I talked about with Buggy, this is a real plus, as Sanji can really get on my nerves in the anime on occasion. And even though they aren't as prominent as in the anime, I like that other characters from this arc, like Patty, get to interact with them naturally too. And what I remember as more of an assholery beef gets turned down to banter. But I am instantly pushed away from Sanji. Look at his food. I hate restaurants that pull style over substance and then charge like $200 for it. But let's face it, that's mostly because the portions are so small and I'm a fat ass. Along with Sanji's fancy food, here to throw it away is head chef Zeph, throwing Sanji off the cooking line for his delusions of grandeur. With Zeph, played by Craig Fairbrass, they have a pretty solid dynamic. Sanji wants bigger things and Zeph, wanting to push him towards them, beats him down so he can rise up without his feelings of repayment and duty holding him back. But of course, we don't learn that for a while, but the way they immediately show Sanji and Zeph's ultimate care for one another, and most importantly his way of cooking, trying to use each ingredient to its maximum potential, but also his building anger, is a nice start.
If I gotta sling one more prime rib medium well, I am going to drop dead of boredom, you old shit! That is what we serve! It's an insult to the meat.
Demoted to waiter, Sanji has to break up a fight between the sort of anime canon Crescent Moon Galley, Jesus, that's a reference and a half, and stuck-up Marine Full Body. One character I am not sorry got the trimmed down treatment. Sanji kicking their asses, but protecting the food on his plate is a nice and easy display of character. We get another show like this displaying how much better his new balanced disposition works as he starts insulting the restaurant and the food to the crew, but upon seeing Nami is instantly into smarmy flirting mode. But you know, without all the
Hate it when they do that.
Instead, this is good comedy as he's shot down by Nami, letting the crew have some simple comedy and enjoyment amongst themselves, which is lovely to see. Kobe is back in Garp's business again, Garp's ship out of commission, but he clearly wants to deal with Luffy his way. So instead of calling for backup, he sends Warlord of the Sea, Dracul Mihawk, to Baratier to fetch him, right as Hawkeye's himself is finishing dealing with the Krieg pirates. And I have a lot to say about this scene. First of all, Mihawk, played by Stephen John Ward, absolutely fucks, destroying Krieg's armada with ease and a Wilhelm. But my favourite part is that in this timeline, the Krieg pirates are so utterly destroyed that their major force doesn't make it to Baratier, and in turn not being a problem for Luffy. But it's a double-edged sword, as yes, that's a cool way to circumnavigate, including the Krieg pirates in the main story, but that means the impressive detail put into Krieg and Pearl with their limited screen time is also disappointing. Pearl, in fact, already face down in the sand the whole scene. The Straw Hats have fun and pig out, even if Nami is having a bit of a freak out with Luffy keeping family secrets and putting them on Major Marine radar. Thankfully, they put that last point in, since her being mad at him for keeping secrets would have been hypocritical to the max. Zeph has to throw Luffy into the kitchens, because of course he didn't think ahead enough to be able to pay the tab, so he's put to work, allowing him to see Zeph telling Sanji to piss off and be a cook somewhere else. And I think they've captured his tough love approach perfectly, as it's instantly supposed to seem like he's being a major asshole, but in retrospect, you can see the point that he's making. Nami starts letting her secret slip, implying she's so freaked out because she's close to a goal, even trying to secure a way to the Konomi Islands alone. Luckily, the guy who happens to be right next to her is going that way. Okay, even for One Piece logic, that was a bit much. Amazingly, after that, Helmeppo actually gets a good scene, asking Kobe what's wrong. Sure, it's not much, but what a step up from where he once was. And he gets to give Kobe the exposition of how the Warlords came to be and just how much of a big deal Mihawk is, shocking Kobe that the world could be so morally grey. Meanwhile, Sanji and Luffy have a really nice scene, giving a really well-played, genuine conversation where he tries to figure Sanji out, and Sanji admits his dream, finding the All Blue, where all ingredients, even the unknown ones in the Four Seas, is found at once. And the way they use Luffy's issues with Garp, comparing that to Sanji and Zeph, is a really interesting detail that I didn't remember being here. But I like that having Garp be part of the overarching narrative is being woven in like this. Like how Mihawk is coming thanks to Garp and not following Krieg, as that way the world's greatest swordsman running into Zoro this early, and not even in the Grand Line, does feel more unintentional and lucky. Whereas here, Mihawk doesn't end up here, he's sent here. A man named Gin bursts through the kitchen begging for help, so Sanji works his magic. Jesus, I could go for some fried rice right now. Anyone else getting hungry looking at that?
I'm bigger than you, I'm higher in the food chain. Get in my belly!
Finally, Luffy offers Sanji a spot in his crew, but Sanji is too loyal. And talk of the One Piece flares Gin's PTSD, being the only survivor of the Krieg pirates. And yeah, I don't remember being too into Gin when it came to Krieg's appearances, so I'm kinda happy he gets written out so quickly. Meanwhile, during this heavy talk, Usopp is doing whatever that is, but Zoro is busy sussing Nami out, giving us pieces of her backstory like her hometown. But the talk is more mutual and nice small details to have between the crew while separated. Garp is eating like a champion, Kobe accusing Garp of bending the Marines' sacred rules against pirates, questioning his allegiance if the Marines are so corrupt. Garp giving him the real talk of a law enforcer, there's always a higher power to bend to, and they will fuck everyone and anyone else, but the Marines do good every now and then, and they say One Piece isn't political. Late into the night, Mihawk has already arrived, Zoro recognizing him instantly, so of course he barrels right in to challenge him to a duel to the death. The guy who single-handedly took out the Krieg pirates, not exactly the brains of the crew, is Zoro. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've seen his backstory, so we know his motivation, so I'm not saying it's bad writing, but he can't even wait for Mihawk to say, I'm gonna drag your captain to the Marines or something. He doesn't know why he's here, so it's not like there's a protective motivation. He's going into a fight he should know he's unprepared for, as if he hasn't got his whole life to train. If he's worried about Mihawk dying or something before he can get to him later, well then Mihawk must not be very good. Like I said, not bad writing, it's perfectly in character for what we know about Zoro, and with him being less on the brain side and more on the morals and honor side, that's mostly what's irking me. It was probably because he's drunk. Zeph checks on Luffy and the pirate calls Zeph out, telling him all about how Sanji was better than him for feeding a hungry man, but Zeph is just legitimately proud of him, showing that while Sanji and Luffy's feelings are similar, they may just be coming from very different places. Or very different old man grandfather figures. Nami is very dead set on not letting Zoro kill himself, but when Zoro explains his motive, Luffy has no objections. Fuck, Nami really is the only sane one here. But Zoro keeps lining up the stupid points.
Why do you even give a shit?
Because you're my friend, you idiot!
You said it yourself, you don't have any friends.
Fuck you, man. Nami is ready to leave the next day while the boys walk Zoro to his doom. And of course, Mihawk uses his little knife.
I don't hunt rabbits with a cannon.
And boy, does it actually work in the live action. I was expecting them to either cut it out or for it to not really work. The cutting can get a little overdone in this fight, but overall, it does look and feel really good when it's put together. Nami returns while Zoro flashes back to Kuina, giving Zoro the strength he needs after Mihawk stabs him. So in respect, Mihawk goes ham with his cross sword, and no matter how cool they look, Zoro loses his other swords and a sizable portion of his chest. But out of respect for both the swordsman and Luffy, Mihawk just kind of wanders off, expecting Zoro to become stronger. Zoro passes out, but not before he and Luffy have a really cool respect-filled bromance moment, where he vows not to lose again, and that's where the episode leaves off. Jesus. So that was Eat It Baratier, and I won't lie, these two episodes were probably my least favourites of the season my first go around. I remember them being kind of boring, but this one has proven me wrong, with a great, if a little short fight, a bunch of really good character moments from the cast, well, except a drunken Usopp, and while the next episode does the heavy hitting of his character, this one does introduce Sanji to us. I hope to once again be proven wrong in the next episode with Sanji's backstory. Coming out of the last episode, all of them are freaking out in their own ways, but Nami's on the ball, sending Luffy for help, while Sanji and Zeph are at it again. But much nicer than the yelling matches before. I actually really like seeing their bond. Sanji decides to fob Zeph off and help Zoro with the power of cuisine. So Zeph is convinced to help. Wow, he may talk a big game, but he really is a pushover for Sanji. Of course, we have another personalized title card, and I will bring it up since it's right here in my face. The Jolly Roger skull here does have Sanji's signature eyebrow. And I have seen complaints that the live-action Sanji doesn't have it, but to be fair, watching the anime you don't even notice it half the time, and unless you're thinking of planning for an aspect of what I think is all the way in the whole Cake Island saga, an aspect that really could just be done away with, I don't really care about the eyebrow. It would look too silly for one of the main characters in live action, and be super annoying to have done in a realistic manner for Taz Skylar. But if they did go that route, with the stunts and moves that guy seems to pull in real life, he'd probably do it.
Is that to sterilize the wounds?
Hell no, that'd be a waste of really good liquor.
So with the power of fish, Zeph stabilizes Zoro, but he's not in the clear. 1 foot in the grave. Sure, Zeph is a bit poetic with it, but he essentially tells them to stay by his side and talk to him, which is a really nice sentiment. But let's be honest, in the One Piece world, for all we know, the power of talking can keep you out of the grave. Meanwhile, Mihawk meets with Garp and decides that he's letting Luffy go for shits and giggles because he's interesting, thinking he may even one day find the One Piece. And Garp has a very normal reaction to this.
I'll take my dinner in the mess hall tonight.
Luffy is still struggling with Zoro's condition, but trying to make the best of it, even turning down food just to help take care of Zoro's sword.
I really gotta get the Wadaichi monkey ready for him.
The what?
Sanji has some good words for Luffy, giving him some captainly advice, revealing Zeph used to be a pirate, and throwing us into Sanji's flashbacks to the time he met Zeph. Sanji was cooking on a ship in the East Blue as a child, and I love this kid's hair. Sure, his acting's not bad, whatever, but the way they've styled his hair to be like Sanji's, I love it. The adults flee, but Zeph's first thought is to invade the kitchen and fix Sanji's food, much to the kid's anger.
Needs oregano.
Zeph is ready to cut Sanji, but when the kid vows not to die before finding the All Blue, the ship sinks, only Zeph and Sanji making it out alive. The two are stranded on a tall island, Zeph splitting the food and sending Sanji to the other side so they can both search for ships. It takes 70 days until Sanji, desperate and out of food, goes after Zeph with the knife he has, although for obvious health reasons they can't make him look as emaciated as in the anime, child abuse and all that lovely stuff, but I think with the small clips of time passing and the makeup are enough to sell the desperate passage of time up there. So in said desperation, Sanji takes the knife and climbs over to the other side of the rock, but Zeph is weak and helpless, so Sanji goes straight for his food only to find it never existed, and in its place is a bag of pirate treasure. Zeph had no food to begin with, and instead the pirate ate his own leg. And while the different shows have different interpretations on how he loses the leg, be it saving Sanji underwater, or in this case, showing the rock he used to sever the leg covered in blood, so this is my favourite direction. It doubles down on Zeph's heart. He not only gave the kid all the food they had, but he mutilated himself so he could give the kid all the real food. And that's a fantastic character turn, as Zeph wanted Sanji to live and seek out the dream of the All Blue, the pirate having failed his whole life to find it, and hopes that the young man can carry on in the search. Zeph was good in the anime, but like Buggy, this real-life actor injects so much nuance and emotion as a physical actor. Even though I did like Baratier in the anime, this beats it out on many points.
Believe me, the All Blue is real. It's real. And if I can't find it, well then maybe you can.
The flashbacks end revealing they made it out of there, and unlike the Garp comparison, this actually allows Luffy to empathize with Sanji, Shanks having done the very same for him when he lost his arm. Nami has been reading to Zoro all this time, and she's reading him a story that just so happens to be a story that becomes very important in the Sky Island saga, and she's having a bit of a rough time. And including the story this early not only allows for a fantastic parallel in what could become of Nami, who she has the potential of being, but Emily Rudd plays it super well, especially when she blows up at Luffy for not stopping Zoro from facing Mihawk. And unlike the anime, keeping Nami here this long, instead of running straight into the Arlong Park arc, was the correct choice since it allows for these emotional moments and arguments. Meanwhile, Kobe is trying to help Garp understand Luffy, but I'm fairly sure it's going to bite him in the ass to an obvious degree. And their faffing around allows time for the fisherman to make it to Baratier, Arlong at the center with his minions Karubi and Chu. But I just think of them as karate and lips because let's face it, compared to Arlong, they aren't really real characters. But they do look fairly good. Arlong essentially takes the place hostage, intimidating everyone into staying, Zeph and his ridiculously large hat coming out to run Arlong around, refusing to tell him Luffy's whereabouts, but Nami now knows he's here. Luffy and Usopp are instead by Zoro's bedside, but before he can get too heartfelt, Nami's barreling in to tell him it's time to run. But when Sanji goes to defend the restaurant, Luffy goes to help, wanting to protect the restaurant and the people to pay back Zeph. And thanks to Nami thinking it's his fault they're threatening people. Arlong starts getting really racist and virtue signaling with his business. Infuriated, the waitstaff is one of his kind. It's really strange because Arlong's whole character is that he thinks he's better than humans, and that he should rule over them. That he should be able to do whatever he wants, but goes around calling others racists. And in the anime, myself now being just past Thriller Bark, I find it funny I can't think of a single instance of fishman racism other than with Arlong. Because this waiter guy isn't a slave, he has a job. And the only other prominent fisherman I can think of is Tom, and his drama was primarily about who he was building ships for, not his race. So I'm not sure whether Arlong as a character is supposed to represent evil people trying to justify their actions, which could be kinda clever, or if this is just kind of a lazy aspect of the world building and I'm gonna have to wait until Fishman Island for any of it to actually matter. It's not like we have anyone out here making up slurs for fishermen, at least not that I can remember. It's not like anyone's calling him a dirty fisher. And yes, if we are making up slurs for fishermen pirates, that would be with a hard R. Alright, since that last part of the joke was tacked on by my father, I really need you to tell me exactly out of 10 how dad jokey that felt, because saying it felt like a 10 out of 10. Luffy finally makes it to face off with Arlong.
You know, I was expecting someone
bigger.
So was I.
That's what I was saying like 2 episodes ago. It turns out Buggy's severed head has been keeping tabs on Luffy by sneaking an ear into his hat. I feel like with how meticulous he is with the hat, in fact filling it up last episode for God's sake, he should have found an ear in there. Buggy's little cameo is really fun, but the CGI could maybe have used a little more cooking. Arlong wants the map, but of course Luffy ain't backing down, even when Arlong tanks a bullet from Zeph. Sanji takes on Mr. Fish Karate, and I love the way they went about translating Sanji's fighting style. Sure, it's better later on, but this is a nice early showing. The physics that look a little bit wireworky look fairly well done, but Arlong beats Luffy in the end, tossing him outside and roughing him up some more. Nami has one last moment with Zoro, but in order to stop Luffy getting killed, she swans in mid-fight to give Arlong the map, convincing him to just toss Luffy into the water instead of straight up ripping his throat out, actually giving him a fighting chance. Now, the Nami betrayal thing, fairly obvious, especially in this version, but I like that Arlong's arrival upped the stakes for her instead of her stealing the ship and bailing in the anime. Not only does it help solidify Luffy and Nami's arcs being the main focus of the season, but allows for more well-written and performed moments between the crew, instead of having to go through the Don Krieg fight and just having her disappearing. And then, not knowing where she is, having to run around the island for a majority of 14 episodes before really getting into it. Sanji shirts off and mans up, pulling Luffy from the water, but not from his denial. And with the Marines, the obvious backfiring of Kobe's words becomes clear, but honestly, at this point, he doesn't seem to actually change anything. Just makes a kind of not very rousing speech. Back at Baratie, Zeph starts his cleaning up, Sanji starting to help, but Zeph blows up on him, making very clear he wants Sanji gone. Zeph clearly caring, but trying his best to get Sanji to leave no matter what he has to say.
Do you want me to quit? Is that what you want?
Quitting is staying here. Don't you get it? It's one thing to have a dream, it's another to go after it.
Usually the let go of what you love even if you have to hurt them trope can get annoying, but the scenes these two have and the acting, no shade to Sanji but Zeph especially, has me rethinking my opinion of this arc. Sure, I'm annoyed it's kind of lost its own identity and becoming mostly set up for Arlong Park, but these character moments are really strong, clearly not as so-and-so as I recalled it from my first watch. Luffy returns to Zoro's bedside, finally finding a crack in his relentless optimism, and taking responsibility for the bad things that happened. And with Zoro making his promise last episode, him waking up at Luffy's request is really sweet. Zoro now properly vows to stand by Luffy for the long game, and needing their full crew, it's time to follow Nami. They stock up on food before leaving, and Sanji decides to hop on board with a rockin' theme. But as they go, Zeph and Patty along with the rest of the staff see Sanji off, and it's pretty good. I'm pretty sure this heart-wrenching goodbye is the most deep-cutting emotions I've felt from Sanji in general. They need to know where she went, so Luffy reveals he has Buggy's head, ending the episode. Well, it may not even approach canon, but I simply can't say no to more Buggy. So ending the Baratie arc, we had some fairly good fights, not hitting the personality of Zoro vs Mihawk, but still really interesting. But where this episode really works is the emotional core, as it's both capping off the Baratie arc and leading us into the season's endgame with Nami that we've been building towards. Nami's stuff with Luffy and Zoro were great, and between the flashbacks and their current day back and forths, including the way it reflects Luffy and his own relationships, were really solid to me. But I understand how they slipped my mind when I watched it originally, since I was put off kilter by the arc switching around and going straight into Arlong Park. So while I do think it loses a bit of its solid image, these episodes do work really well in this season. Buggy is steering them to Arlong in trade for his body back, but he's not exactly making any friends. Meanwhile, the crew speculate on Nami's reasons, Zoro seeming pissed while Sanji shows his woman-oriented demeanor.
Yeah, well, tattoos don't tell the whole story, and like any woman, she is a mystery to be unraveled.
Nami made her choice.
You don't know why?
The only thing I want to hear from you at the dinner special. You don't know Nami.
Sounds like you don't know her very well either, bosshead.
Showing his nature without making him super obnoxious, just like in Baratie. More of a flirt than a pathetic pushover. They finally reach the Konomi Islands, giving us a nice Nami-themed title card, and we are catapulted straight into flashback land, seeing Nami and her sister Nojiko having innocent fun in their tangerine grove, along with their mother Belmare, played by Jenna Galloway. The scene really hammering the innocent angle into you with all the subtlety of 10 metric tons. Now, while we haven't seen adult Nojiko played by Chioma Umela, there is an obvious difference with the character, being she is played by a black actress. Now, much like other race changes to some, in this show it doesn't contradict anything. From the get-go in the anime, no matter how much she gets whitewashed, Nojiko, when she was introduced, is clearly darker skinned than everyone else. Sure, not by much, but she is at very least tanned. So her being the character to be played by a darker actress makes complete sense. But it also seems like an easy, kind of lazy visual indicator to once again, with very little subtlety, make sure you remember their adopted siblings. Either way, the casting causes no issues, but as we'll mention later, that doesn't mean her character is perfect when we start talking about things other than the casting. She's shaken out of the rosy flashbacks and is now back in the present, right in Arlong's lair, swindling some fishmen out of their money and showing off Buggy's headless body. The indoor set of the map room in Arlong Park is pretty good, but sends us back into flashbacks again. This time of Nami seemingly indulging in her love of cartography, even from a young age. But Belmare isn't very happy as Nami had stolen the book. Everything immediately spiraling as Nami exclaims her hatred of being fairly poor, lashing out at her adoptive family, and Belmare slapping her across the face. Well, I suppose Nojiko is the only sane one in this family. White people be crazy. Belmare eventually catches up with Nami, telling her the story of how she found them, hiding in the rubble of a marine and pirate battle. So she took them in and retired to the Tangerine Grove with them. The visuals are nice, but Jesus, she made quick work of that tangerine. I suppose you would when most of your life is on a Tangerine Grove. Arlong interrupts our reminiscing by just being generally a creep, telling Nami the deal they have is still on, but very happy he now has the map, showing him every marine and other interesting point in the East Blue, and going on about how he'll rule it as his empire. That is something I find funny, as Luffy takes him out later, but any competent marine, say Garp, who just so happens to be like one click west, if he managed to find out Arlong's plans, hell, even if he went after him after he pulls his plan off, I feel like Garp would probably kill Arlong in one punch. I don't have much faith in him when he doesn't make it out of Season 1. And Season 3's antagonist is many steps above him being a warlord. That doesn't mean he isn't an intimidating villain, Nami's perspective more than anything making him feel really imposing. It's just with hindsight you realise that his eyes might have been bigger than his stomach. Arlong sends Nami to Cocoa Village, her once home village, to get their protection money, if you know what I mean. And only now is Garp making it to Baratier, who are still cleaning up after Arlong's mess. Not that Garp is any help. Garp wants info on Luffy, but instead Zeph starts bribing him with steaks. Much to Boggard's dismay. Yeah, I had to Google Boggard's name. I'm sure half you didn't know it either. What does he actually do? The Straw Hats make it onto land and into Cocoa Village, not a place in perfect shape after Arlong's rule, coming across Nami coming for their berry. Nojiko not very happy at her sister's appearance. Nami talks with a pretty nice looking adaptation of Genzo, flashing back to her talking with him as a child, giving back the stolen book to him, and him giving her a really good talk on how to find the good ways to get what she wants. See, that's how you do it, instead of smacking at the kid for yelling at you. They're interrupted by someone pulling an Usopp and being followed by Arlong, taking the village, going so far as flipping over a whole house. Wait, you're telling me over all these years no one bothered to flip that house back over? In the anime it looked like a whole town flipped, so I get why no one tried to do that, but come on, you all couldn't take a break for one afternoon? Genzo gets his scars in pretty sick detail, jumping back to the present and giving as much money as they can, but coming up short. It's now she notices the Straw Hats here and is very vehement that they leave her alone, but she's not very convincing. Luffy and Sanji both knowing she's not being straight with them, even if Sanji's reasoning is a little more sexist. Thanks to help from Genzo, the crew head towards Nojiko's place, Nami's family home, but the reception isn't too friendly.
Whoa! Turn around and leave. Now.
That's what I've been saying.
Nojiko is very angry with Nami, disgusted with her antics, but they buy their way into her good graces with Sanji's cooking. Now, this is my major gripe with the season. Not Sanji's cooking, but Nojiko's disgust with Nami. Now, in the anime, Nami is acting evil for the sake of her village. The deal from before, much like in the live action, being that she can buy the village out with enough funds, and in the original, Nojiko, and if I remember correctly, the townspeople, or at least Genzo, know why Nami is doing bad and pretend to despise her, hoping she'll give up on them and run away, to give her a chance to live a life free of the burden of saving them. But here, they just despise her, and Nojiko, who in the original got her tattoos to match Nami's to make her feel less alone, still has them without the reason behind them. A fatal flaw with adaptation is including details or moments without understanding them, making them feel poorly done or needless. And sure, Nami's story still works as it is here. It's inferior to the original, but still works, but also is contradicted in these details. So while on its own, it's honestly just fine. If they adapted the arc correctly, it would have been a lot better, and having remnants of the original in there that contradict the current story as an anime watcher is very frustrating. But I feel like it may not be a problem for someone watching this first. Garp is enjoying his steak in disturbingly close detail, and he has a nice chat with Zeph, basically telling him the same thing Kobe did. That it's Luffy's time to shine as a pirate, but a lot more poetically. And I think I like Zeph more than Kobe this season. Meanwhile, Nami is trying to talk to Arlong, but they get interrupted by a group of marines headed by Nezumi, the little rat man, both physically and in business, explaining how Arlong has been under the radar for so long, adding well to the hopeless feeling of the situation as the bad guy is basically paying off the cops. Thanks to Nojiko and once again, Sanji's cooking, we get to see the continuation of the flashbacks, Belmare trying to murk Arlong but failing, not having enough to pay for her children, so instead she gives enough just for them, letting Arlong kill her instead. And they have a tearful last words, but the scene does feel really odd by the end, as he just shoots her right there in front of them, without much ceremony or impact, no blood, almost completely off screen. It really subverts any impact that the death should have, especially dying in front of her children. It starts off strong, but it just feels underwhelming. Consider me not whelmed. Having heard the story, Luffy and Zoro talk, and I really like the moment between these two. Zoro shares his own negative opinion, but when Luffy talks from the heart, talking about what he sees in the crew, Zoro is snarky, but not contradictory. And then they proceed to just sit in silence. Sure, I would have liked a little more dialogue, but Zoro's quiet respect goes a long way. Nezumi microaggressions to Arlong, but manages to get out of there alive after giving us a bunch of lore details, like talking about the world government and Arlong's animosity with Jinbei. And it seems Nami finally has enough money to pay for her deal with Arlong, but he's clearly up to something, and back at the Baratier, Helmeppo, while still dickish, is a lot more friendly with Kobe, which is nice to see. I still find him really annoying, and it's clear when he's fishing for info, but not being as big a dick as before does go a long way as they talk politics. But while Zeph was tight-lipped, the bartender isn't as rebellious. So with more nice time with Zeph and Garp coming clean that he really just doesn't want to see the things that happened to Gold Roger to happen to Luffy, and a Jaya reference. Wow, there are more Sky Island Saga references these past two episodes than I remember there being. They head on out into the direction of the Konomi Islands. Buggy gets some more mugging, but Nami is busy digging up Belmare's corpse. Oh, that's not fun. But in reality, this is where she's been keeping the money. Nojiko very offended at the grave desecration, and without knowing the truth, very understandably. But with the help of flashbacks, we see Nami making her deal with Arlong, giving him her exceptional mapping skills, joining his crew, and setting the price to buy the village back from him. Nojiko is now angry Nami refused to tell her, Nami having felt she had to do it on her own to save them. Like I said before, it's still fairly well done on its own, but when you've seen the anime, it does feel a little insulting with how half-assed they've tried to go both ways with it. Nezumi arrives and takes the obviously stolen loot, him very clearly working for Arlong, not the sharpest tool in the shed. And once again, even with Emily Rudd's fantastic acting, the direction and filming leaves a lot to be desired. Look at this guy slowly and carefully putting the money back in, it's so distracting. Arlong feels this victory over Nami was enough to start making speeches to his people about once again ruling the world. It's performed well, but once again with bad, jumpy editing. And Nami collapses. This also not very well done. Now, I'm not knocking the acting, she's excellent, but she stops for no reason. There's not a sign that she gives up in hopelessness or anything. She just kind of stops in the middle of the road, and that's the point that Luffy and the rest of the crew happen to be at. And I hate to keep calling back to the original, but like I say, even when aspects here aren't that good, this is still an alright episode. But once again, they miss the mark as an adaptation completely. Originally, she collapses thinking that everyone she has spent her time protecting were about to get themselves killed for her. Here, she collapses after being betrayed and stabs herself. It's still good and very well acted, but much like her relationship with Nojiko, without those extra layers, the story feels a lot cheaper. Luffy finds her self-mutilating in gruesome fashion and decides to help her in the most stilted declaration I've seen.
Of course I will!
Seriously, that just doesn't fit. I think that's the only time I've been genuinely disappointed with Iñaki Godoy's line reads. The others' close-ups as they agree to fight also feel pretty stilted.
Right!
I fear this might be the worst episode of the season, as it finishes with the village being attacked. So that was the girl with the sawfish tattoo, the start of the Arlong Park arc, and boy, both on its own and as an adaptation, this was pretty disappointing. On its own, the acting switched from fantastic to bored, the editing and direction ripped any investment I had out of some big moments, like Belmer's death and Arlong's final speech of world domination, and as an adaptation, it half-asses the story to such a point that, sure, it works on its own, but every choice made me, someone who really liked Arlong Park in the anime, feeling that this version is disappointingly and clearly inferior. And it shouldn't have been. On the brighter side, I like Nojiko and Nami, acted greatly, and while not as good as the original, their dynamics interested me a lot. Arlong and Nezumi were adapted pretty well, and although once again different from the source, with the exception of the final scene, the boys were fairly good throughout, but Emily Rudd easily steals the show. I am pretty sure this is the worst episode of the season, but it's still only like a 5 or 6 out of 10, so not terrible. But I am very disappointed, both with it as an adaptation and as the lead into the finale of what should have been a really good season of TV. The episode starts in flashback land as we see Nami getting her tattoo done and slaving away for Arlong in cruel detail, as she makes his maps waiting for the day she can free her people. But back in the present, the Straw Hats come upon the now burnt down village, Arlong just taking that extra step to fuck with her. The people have finally had enough, Nojiko having spilt the beans, and this is exactly what I talked about last time. The writers had the basic idea from the original down pat, but in adapting them in this way, forgot why the original was so impactful. Sure, it's cool that one word from Nojiko got the whole town to suddenly back Nami, but where in the original they're leaving breaks Nami, here it's just a tad emotional and then we don't even see them near the battle. Yep, alright, enough complaining about this specific point. So the villagers weapon up ready to rip Arlong's spine out of his asshole, ready to die trying for their freedom. But all it takes is Luffy and the boys promising to kick ass along with Nami to seemingly get the villagers to step down. I don't know, that feels like a pretty dodgy heel turn. They're ready to die if they can't have their freedom, and these guys they just met are like, nah, we'll do it. So I guess the villagers just went, okay, that seems legit. I still think it's good, but this arc is really pissing me off. We get our final title card of the season based on Arlong looking snazzy, and we check in with our favourite Marines. And Nezumi. Ew. The Rat Man has been summoned by Garp, who is very pissed at the rampant piracy, but Nezumi is very ready to play down Arlong's shenanigans and pin Luffy as a ruthless killer. An accusation that neither cadet are very receptive to.
The pirate in a straw hat. He's the one responsible for this brutal attack.
What?
No.
I don't know what it is about the character archetype of the spoiled blonde asshole that gets redeemed that really works for me, but be it Season 2 Chloe and Helmeppo by the end of this, it's usually really satisfying to see. Garp tells Nezumi to stay his hand so he can go after Luffy personally, and at the same time the Straw Hats launch their attack on Arlong Park. Now the fights will be split up later, but first we get a big open skirmish taking out the rabble, mostly thanks to Zoro and Sanji, Luffy and Nami getting into the map bathroom while Usopp, pissing off Chew, runs out of there. Yeah, I didn't expect much else. The action in this episode is really good. Sure, we still have some obvious but not bad wire work, plus a Wilhelm, and the direction here, done by the same individual as last episode, feels a lot better. The camera movement feeling a lot more meaningful in these action scenes on the whole, especially when compared to the annoying cutting of last time. But the action for this episode, which is the focus considering it's the finale, holds up pretty well. Luffy starts getting really pissed seeing the conditions Nami had to live in, but Arlong interrupts them before they can sneak back out. And either he's really proud of the name he gave this place, or he thought up a joke in his head because that laugh was really oddly timed.
Welcome to Arlong Park.
Usopp is still running around scared. Sure, he may not be brave, but he's certainly got stamina, leaping while dodging Lips' projectiles. Zoro seems to still be suffering from his injuries and Sanji's quips, but the action is still really good while Luffy and Nami have to suffer the real pain, Arlong's virtue signaling, and sure he sounds kinda cool, but at the end of the day, his whiny monologuing.
I'm just getting started, darling.
Arlong tries to wave away his bad deeds, but Luffy isn't having it, breaking Arlong's sword in half ready to kick his ass, after he implies Nami is his possession.
You're no better than that axe-hand guy, or that fake butler, or anyone else who tries to hurt other people. So I'm gonna kick your ass just like I did theirs.
Luffy sends Nami away so he can fight, and I know these fights are happening concurrently, but I find it funny it takes like 8 minutes for her to exit the building. Anyway, let's talk about the fights one by one. First of all is Usopp versus Chew, and it's not very crazy on the action side. The little we do get is good, but Usopp using his ingenuity to lull Chew into a false sense of security and blow him up like a firework is both cool but also very in character, giving Usopp a great badass moment without suddenly making him an action hero. But Jesus, the slow look at Chew's burnt corpse while Usopp celebrates feels haunting. I think Usopp just killed a man. Like, Arlong's fate is ambiguous, and a lot of Zoro's cuts were probably kills, but I'm pretty sure this is the only kill where the body gets focused on for so long. Sanji and Zoro are annoyingly petty while they fight. Sure, it's mostly fun, but there are moments it does get annoying. They end up letting Buggy get away.
It's time to exit stage left.
But they've got more troubles as Mr. Karate over here starts beating them up. Sanji eventually takes the guy out, invoking the power of simping to send Mr. Fishman Karate right across Arlong Park. And yeah, the wire pull shot looks really weird, but I think it works well enough selling Sanji's power. Usopp returns victorious but late to the rest of the party, and Nami finally exits the building, giving Sanji a great moment. Seriously, it never fails to crack me up.
Nami!
You're all okay.
So lastly, for the concurrent fights is Luffy versus Arlong. The hand-to-hand is pretty cool once again, selling Arlong as a proper threat. And once again, when it comes to nice details without the substance, Luffy knocks Arlong's teeth out. Now in the anime fight, this becomes a big deal since Arlong uses his teeth in combat, but here, sure, it's once again a nice and gross visual to sell Arlong as imposing, but it does kinda come out of nowhere. Luffy rightly clocks how worthless Arlong's plans are without Nami's talent, so while he may not be strong enough to beat the piss out of Arlong, he instead destroys and tricks Arlong himself into destroying his palace and maps. Luffy actually getting to knock the wind out of Arlong with his Gatling attack and caving the building in with a kick, so strong he stamps the fisherman through the floors all the way to the ground in spectacular destruction. The crew, especially Nami, are worried about Luffy's safety, but he manages to come out victorious, making for a really feel-good moment. Kinda weird that in all the action, Usopp is the one with the gruesome kill, but sure. So overall, all the fisherman fights were pretty good. I kinda wish Luffy vs Arlong got more time, so he could actually use the power of friendship to properly beat Arlong's skull in, but focusing on the symbolic side of bringing Arlong's plans down around him was probably the way to go time and budget-wise. But while it's not like we needed the whole Luffy using Arlong's teeth against him stuff, some more ass-kicking before destroying the building would have been nice. The village holds a big party and celebration, Sanji using the time to flirt with Nojiko and, I guess, kind of with Zoro. It's probably manly snark, but who knows. Usopp is telling tall tales that Luffy nicely supports, but the fun ends with Garp and his Marines barging in. He wants Luffy arrested, but Kobe and Helmeppo both tell him to stick it, which is really sweet from Helmeppo, but Garp ignores them to go one-on-one with Luffy. Luffy absolutely doesn't stand a chance, it's very one-sided, but Luffy wins in the end by refusing to give in, and giving Garp flashbacks to the day he had Roger executed. So satisfied that Luffy is strong of character and knows his path, Garp gives up trying to make a Marine out of him and sends his men after Arlong. Nami getting her moment of retribution by giving Nezumi brain damage. Very satisfying.
Arrest them too! They are the real criminals!
I do like Garp's whole test angle, but rewatching the earlier scenes, they really could have done with some reworking to make it feel more like that. Sure, it's teased when he talks with Zeph, but during his interactions with Kobe this whole season, this is not at all the angle Garp was taking. It feels very off when just some little changes could have kept his goal ambiguous, but left enough room for positive interpretation. Right here, it just feels kind of out of left field, not making much sense in retrospect. Luffy gets a nice moment talking about his friends as Garp leaves, and the next day Nami, finally free, sits where Belmare talked to her in the past, right next to her grave, speaking to her in a very sweet monologue. Until Nojiko interrupts. She's very good at that.
Now you're desecrating her grave too?
Nami's finally gotten her tattoo changed. No, I'm not going to talk about my problem there for the 15th time, but they have a sweet goodbye before Nami leaves with the rest. We get a really good scene to wrap up past characters of the season as Kobe arrives to show Luffy that he finally got what he wanted in episode 1, a wanted poster courtesy of Nezumi's bruised ego. Luffy absolutely loving his place as the highest bounty in the East Blue, getting a sweet hug from Kobe and showing the sea-wide reactions to the poster. Makino, Kaya and Zeph happy to hear the news, but Buggy and Alvida happen to run into each other and look at each other longingly over hatred of Luffy. Meanwhile, Garp agrees to personally train Kobe and Helmeppo since they stood true to their beliefs earlier. And on a random beach somewhere, Mihawk delivers the news to Shanks personally, and share a really good scene. The snark is on point, and I love Shanks getting Mihawk to chill and drink with them all. It's really fun. The crew have gotten back on the merry, having brought some of Nami's home along with them in tangerine trees, and they plan about heading to the Grand Line, but before heading off they have a nice scene between them flashing back to their pasts as they proclaim their dreams and goals together. And paired with the music, it all comes together really sweetly as a rendition of We Are plays in the background. And of course, we top it off with an end of season stinger, Smoker being teased, wasting paper. I bet he doesn't know how many trees have been cut down to make those wanted posters. I think we can all agree deforestation is the real villain here. So now before we talk about the season as a whole, let's just recap this episode. The action was solid even if I wish there were a few changes. Arlong Park as an arc ultimately works thanks to the emotions behind Nami and Luffy, even if we tripped up a lot at the start. And while dodgy through the season, in isolation the Garp thing works fairly well. The ending of the episode caps off the season nicely as we check in with past characters and set up season 2 with Smoker, Buggy and Alvida, leaving us off feeling really good after the sweet scenes the crew have together once their voyage is resumed. So overall, we have a really solid finale to a pretty solid season. Now to sum up the season as a whole, as an adaptation there are massive holes that are honestly glaring, but from the perspective of someone without that background, the show really works. Maybe not perfectly, but really solid altogether. With episode 7 probably going the worst in direction, the only one that had unconvincing moments of performance and worst adaptation, whereas changes in the other arcs that I was initially annoyed by, like Krieg's absence, are very well explained away or understandably changed in the story. The main crew were all pretty good, Nami, Zoro and Luffy taking the main character spots and evolving really nicely over the season as they bond with each other and work through their issues, being Arlong, Kuina and Garp, while even if introduced later, both Usopp and Sanji get great moments and are infinitely more endearing to me than their anime counterparts. With the Marines, I don't think the Kobe and Garp sidelines are bad. I think more focus on Helmeppo's turn works better than him suddenly turning up in Water 7 playing all nice. I like that we get to see his journey of being less of an arse, and the Kobe and Gup interactions are mostly solid. I just don't know how they'll work next season, and there were moments they got very close to being annoying with how frequent they were. But there were a few times where they were used to benefit the main story pretty effectively, such as explaining to us the Warlord system back in episode 5. Everything else was pretty positive: the antagonist, the direction, bar that one episode, the performances, also bar that one episode, and both set design and effects all worked really well, and I'm psyched as hell for Season 2. So I'll give Season 1 of the One Piece live action, as it has little drawbacks, a great 8.5 out of 10. The main reasons it's not higher are what Episode 7 does to Arlong Park, and how even though it was much greater than I remembered, the Baratier arc does feel a little too much like a lead-in without its own identity, both coming from an anime watching and removed perspective. This is a perfectly reasonable reworking of ideas through the season, with only a few cuts that would have made the season better. And without anime knowledge, it does really well to recontextualize ideas and even drop hints for far later in the story, showing that while not always making a perfect product, these showrunners and everyone from the production to the actors put in a lot of effort, love, and respect into this show. Thank you already for watching my review of Season 1 of One Piece. Eager to get into Season 2. Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you wish, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, ring the notification bell so that you're told every single time that I make an upload. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next review. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.